On a misty morning in January 1815, along the muddy banks of the Mississippi River, two empires stood poised for a catastrophic clash. Yet beneath the smoke and thunder lay a bizarre twist of fate. The war had already officially ended, but nobody on this blood-soaked field knew it. By 1814, the United States was locked in a brutal struggle against the British Empire. Known as the War of 1812, this conflict was fought over maritime rights, western expansion, and national sovereignty. The young American Republic faced the world's premier military superpower with its future hanging in the balance. Strategic target number one was New Orleans. Situated near the mouth of the Mississippi, this bustling port city served as the economic gateway to the American frontier. If Great Britain seized control of New Orleans, they could sever inland trade routes and effectively choke the young republic into submission. To defend this vital prize, Washington dispatched Major General Andrew Jackson. Aggressive, iron-willed, and notoriously fiery, Jackson was a veteran Indian fighter who nursed an unyielding hatred for the British. He arrived in New Orleans determined to hold the city at all costs, regardless of the daunting odds. Jackson's army was one of the most diverse fighting forces ever assembled under the American flag. Regular U.S. infantrymen stood side by side with Kentucky and Tennessee frontiersmen, local Louisiana militia, free men of color, and Choctaw warriors. Together, they formed a ragtag defense against Europe's finest battlefield veterans. Opposing them were 8,000 seasoned British troops, many of whom had fought and defeated Napoleon in Europe. Commanded by General Sir Edward Pakenham, a distinguished and brave officer, the British Expeditionary Force was confident, well-disciplined, and convinced that American militiamen would crumble under a swift, organized bayonet charge. In December 1814, a massive British armada anchored off the coast of Louisiana. Transporting thousands of soldiers across the treacherous Gulf waters, the invasion fleet prepared to maneuver through the maze of bayous surrounding New Orleans, seeking a vulnerable path directly into the heart of the city. British rowboats swarm Lake Bourne. American gunboats open fire, but are quickly overwhelmed by sheer numbers. With American naval resistance cleared, British vanguard troops crept through the swampy waterways of Bayou Bienvenue. Guided by local fishermen loyal to Spain, the invaders landed on the eastern bank of the Mississippi River, establishing a forward camp at the Chalmette Plantation, just 9 miles south of New Orleans. A messenger bursts in. Jackson slams his fist down, shouting, "By the Eternal, they shall not sleep on our soil." Jackson selected his battlefield wisely, Chalmette Plantation, a narrow strip of flat land bordered by the roaring Mississippi River on one side and an impenetrable cypress swamp on the other. Here, Jackson ordered his men to construct a formidable earthwork rampart, known as Line Jackson, behind the Rodriguez Canal. Pickaxes strike mud. Soldiers and citizens pile earth, timber, and cotton bales to build an impenetrable defensive wall. To construct his defenses and arm his men, Jackson desperately needed artillery, flints, and black powder. He turned to an unlikely ally, Jean Lafitte, the charismatic leader of the Baratarian pirates. Lafitte had turned down lucrative British offers, choosing instead to offer his outlaw fleet and supplies to the American cause. Lafitte's men were expert cannoneers with years of naval combat experience. Jackson accepted their help, pardoning their past piracy in exchange for their lethal gunnery skills. Positioned along Line Jackson, the Baratarian artillery teams would soon prove to be one of the most deadly assets in the American arsenal. By late December, both armies were entrenched. The British waited for reinforcements while Jackson fortified his position day and night. But Andrew Jackson was never a commander to sit passively and wait for the enemy to strike first. He decided to launch a daring surprise attack. Darkness falls. The warship USS Carolina opens fire from the river, blasting the British camp with broadside grapeshot. American infantry charges into the misty darkness. Hand-to-hand combat erupts with knives, rifle butts, and bayonets. The night attack of December 23 was a tactical draw, but a strategic masterstroke for Jackson. It rattled British confidence, forcing General Pakenham to pause and regroup. This crucial delay gave the Americans precious days to strengthen Line Jackson, transforming a simple dirt mound into a deadly fortress. New Year's Day, 1815. British heavy guns roar, but American counter-battery fire quickly smashes their positions. Frustrated by failing artillery, General Pakenham prepared a full-scale frontal assault for January 8. His plan was complex, a simultaneous two-pronged attack across the river and against Line Jackson. But complex plans require perfect timing, and on the damp fields of Chalmette, timing was about to shatter completely. Dawn broke on Sunday, January 8, 1815. A thick, heavy fog blanketed the fields of Chalmette Plantation, concealing the British forces as they formed rank. 4,000 redcoats advanced toward the American lines, their bayonets fixed, moving in rigid, disciplined columns through the dim early light. Disaster struck the British before the fight even began. The regiment tasked with carrying the fascines and scaling ladders, vital tools needed to cross the canal and scale the earthworks, forgot them in the rear. By the time they realized their fatal mistake, the advancing columns were already exposed on the open field. The sun burns away the morning fog. The British redcoats stand completely exposed in the wide, open clearing. Jackson stands atop the rampart, pointing his sword. "Give it to them, boys. Elevate them guns." Boom! American cannons roar in unison, tearing massive gaps through the packed ranks of advancing British soldiers. Behind the ramparts, Kentucky and Tennessee riflemen stood 4 deep. Equipped with long-range hunting rifles, these sharpshooters fired in devastating rotating volleys. As one man fired, he stepped back to reload while the next stepped up, creating a continuous, unrelenting wall of lead that withered the advancing enemy. Rifle fire cuts down British officers. Regiments stall under lethal fire, trapped with no ladders to scale the wall. Seeing his assault falter into chaos, General Sir Edward Pakenham galloped into the thick of battle to rally his retreating troops. Hat in hand, he urged his men forward through the rain of shrapnel and lead. But his brave display made him an irresistible target for American marksmen. Grapeshot strikes Pakenham. The British commander-in-chief collapses from his horse, mortally wounded amidst the smoke. The 93rd Sutherland Highlanders charge forward across the bloody field, bagpipes blaring defiantly through the thunder of battle. Without clear orders to advance or retreat, the Highland Regiment stood firm under concentrated American artillery and rifle fire. Their stubborn bravery turned tragic as cannonballs ripped through their ranks. In less than 20 minutes, hundreds of Highlanders fell, turning the open plain into a catastrophic killing zone. British troops briefly scale the far-right bastion. Hand-to-hand fighting erupts, but American reserves rapidly drive them back. Command breaks down. Redcoat regiments break formation, dropping weapons and fleeing across the mud-soaked plain. In less than 2 hours, the main assault was over. The battlefield grew eerily silent as the thick clouds of black powder smoke slowly drifted away. What remained was a scene of staggering carnage, with over 2,000 British soldiers killed, wounded, or captured lying scattered across Chalmette Plantation. The disparity in casualties was astonishing. The British suffered over 2,000 casualties, including the death of their commanding general and 2 senior brigade commanders. American losses, by contrast, were shockingly light, roughly 13 killed and 58 wounded. It was one of the most lopsided victories in military history. Surprised by the scale of their victory, American troops stepped over the ramparts not to gloat, but to offer aid to the wounded British soldiers trapped in the mud. For days, medical teams from both sides tended to the fallen, united in horror at the swift devastation wrought by modern firepower. Command of the surviving British Army fell to General John Lambert. Realizing that any further attack on Jackson's fortified position would mean total annihilation, Lambert ordered a full retreat. The remaining redcoats slogged back through the swamps to their fleet and sailed away, leaving New Orleans firmly in American hands. On January 23, 1815, Andrew Jackson entered New Orleans to a hero's welcome. Parades filled the streets, church bells rang out, and citizens showered his troops with flowers. The ragtag army of frontiersmen, pirates, and militiamen had achieved the unthinkable, defeating the conquerors of Napoleon Bonaparte. Yet, as news of the victory spread across the country, a startling truth came to light. On December 24, 1814, 2 full weeks before the Battle of New Orleans was fought, American and British diplomats in Belgium had already signed the Treaty of Ghent, officially ending the War of 1812. Because sailing ships took weeks to cross the Atlantic Ocean in 1815, news of the peace treaty did not reach Louisiana in time. Thousands of men had bled and died in a battle fought after the war was legally over. This tragic delay led many later historians to label the battle a pointless tragedy. However, military historians argue the battle was far from meaningless. Had the British captured New Orleans, they might have refused to honor the Treaty of Ghent, using their foothold on the Mississippi River to control the American continent. Jackson's decisive victory ensured that the treaty's terms were enforced without condition. More than a tactical success, New Orleans was a psychological triumph. It sparked a surge of national pride known as the Era of Good Feelings. For a young republic still finding its footing, the victory proved that United States citizens could stand against European superpowers and secure their own destiny. Above all, the battle catapulted Andrew Jackson into national stardom. Old Hickory became a symbol of American resilience, frontier grit, and populist strength. His overwhelming popularity from Chalmette launched his political career, ultimately propelling him straight into the White House as the 7th President of the United States. From folk songs to monument statues, the legend of New Orleans echoes through 2 centuries of American history. Today, Chalmette Plantation stands peaceful and still along the Mississippi River. The quiet earthworks remain as a monument to the day a divided group of frontiersmen, outlaws, and soldiers stood together in the fog, shaping the destiny of a rising nation forever.